The 5-2 Ravens are now the 5-3 Ravens after their winning streak was ended by the now 2-6 Cleveland Browns. I didn't do a game recap or reaction video for two reasons. The first being I was in such shock at not only the loss itself, but how many issues occurred in almost every facet of the game for the Ravens. The second reason is why I'm doing this video, and that's because after a few days I've calmed down and was thinking more realistically about the issues facing this Baltimore Ravens team. I believe there needs to be solutions for addressing the most concerning issues we saw in not only the game against the Browns, but throughout the first 8 weeks of the season as well. If the Baltimore Ravens want to be more than just another great regular season team, they've got some work to do. And that goes for everybody, the front office, the coaches, and the players. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report. If you enjoy this breakdown of what the Ravens need to address and are looking forward to seeing those changes, hit the like button. If you're new around here, subscribe. Also, put your thoughts and opinions on how the Ravens can fix some of their glaring weaknesses in the comments section below. First things first, let's rip off the Band-Aid and say what we're all thinking. This defense is bad. It hurts me to say it, since my best video on the channel to date is about how the 2024 Baltimore Ravens defense could be better than the 2023 defense. But it's clear that what the 2023 Ravens defense did is unattainable for this unit in its current state. 26th in points allowed, 25th in yards allowed, 24th in first downs against us, 31st in passes attempted against us, 30th in passing touchdowns allowed, 27th in net yards gained per pass attempt, and of course 32nd out of 32 teams in passing yards allowed. Yes, we are still the best team against the run, ranking first in yards allowed, attempts against, and yards per attempt. But what good does that do if the teams can just throw on you all day and you aren't even in a prevent-esque defense? It's great if you can take away a team's ability to run the ball and make them one-dimensional. But you know what's better? If that one dimension isn't your team's biggest weakness. It's true that we were missing some of our best players on defense against the Browns, including our top two corners in Humphrey and Wiggins, but that's hardly an excuse when we were up against a team that just lost their starting quarterback and leading wide receiver in the past 2 weeks and hadn't scored more than 18 points in a game before ours all season. Besides, even with Humphrey and Wiggins, teams were absolutely blowing us up in the pass game. The way I see it, the Ravens need to make a change to not only correct the issues they already have, but to plan for the rest of the season as well to avoid potential issues lurking just below the surface. The answer is to make a trade. All the trades that I'm interested in are on the defensive side of the ball, and as for what players and positions the Ravens should be looking to trade for, there's really only two that I believe would have a necessary and immediate impact for them: safety and outside linebacker. I've got three possible options at each position, going from least likely or least wanted to most likely / most wanted. Of course, when I say most likely, that doesn't mean that the Ravens will trade for this player. What it means is that the fit, need, and cap numbers work. Let's start with the outside linebackers, because even with KVN having a lot of success in weeks 2 through 4, racking up 2 sacks in each game, it's really been an issue for the Ravens pass rush to consistently get to opposing quarterbacks when they really need to this season. While at least 10 Ravens have a sack to their name, the outside linebacker group has 15.5 of those sacks out of the team's 24 total, and of those 15.5, KVN has 7 of them. The other 8.5 come from Odafe Owe with 4.5, Tavius Robinson with 1.5, David Ajabo with 1, and Yannick Ngakoue with 1.5. That is not good enough, and it shows, as opposing quarterbacks have all day to throw the ball on us this season. The first and least likely is a familiar face, 31-year-old Jadeveon Clowney. The main reason Clowney is listed as my least likely is not because of the fit, of course. He was our leading pass rusher here last year, as well as a great edge setter against the run. The main reason it's unlikely is due to the money that Carolina Panthers are paying him, $20 million over 2 years with $12 million fully guaranteed. While his production so far has not warranted the contract he's on, that's likely due to the struggles the Panthers have faced so far this year, and with Brian Burns signing with the Giants during the offseason, Clowney gets a lot more attention than he would have otherwise. While I would love to bring Jadeveon Clowney back to Baltimore for the rest of the season, unless the Panthers are willing to eat most of his contract, there's a very low likelihood that this deal gets done. My second option is 25-year-old outside linebacker Chase Young from the New Orleans Saints. Unlike Clowney, Young's price tag is virtually non-existent. With his cap hit this year being just under $3.5 million and only $1.1 million guaranteed, he wouldn't break the bank in a trade depending on the compensation from the Ravens. His production so far has also been better than Clowney's, as he has 2 sacks through 8 games with 15 pressures and only 1 missed tackle. The two potential issues with this trade are Young's cap hit next year, which is just over $9 million, but not guaranteed, as I stated. And the other issue is multiple accounts of effort not being present consistently in Young's game. If the Saints were willing to move on from Chase Young, and the Ravens coaching staff, along with Chuck Smith, could acquire a motivated young pass rusher, no pun intended, this Ravens pass rush would be so much more dangerous and deep. But my third option, and the one that I want the most, is Giants 24-year-old outside linebacker Azeez Ojulari. If Eric DeCosta could find a way to bring in Ojulari, he would single-handedly fix all of our pass rush issues. With a cap hit of only $2.1 million, as well as becoming a free agent in the upcoming offseason, the Ravens could potentially swipe a top pass rusher from a failing team for a steal. Through 4 years, Ojulari has 22 sacks, 20 tackles for loss, 34 quarterback hits, and 4 forced fumbles. And so far through 8 games in 2024, he has 6 sacks, 8 pressures, and he's only blitzed 3 times, as well as having 24 combined tackles. The money is right, and with the potential of an extension or even long-term deal, we might have the opportunity of getting an excellent young pass rusher coming into his prime. The production numbers are there and consistent too, and with the Giants having signed Brian Burns this past offseason and a potential deal on the horizon with the 2022 first-round pick, Kevon Thibodeau, the 2-6 Giants may be looking for some draft compensation to help their struggling offense in return for a player that they won't be able to sign in the upcoming offseason anyway. This deal makes too much sense, and if the Ravens don't trade for him, you can bet that another team will. But let's move on to the second group, the safeties. I have heard many people say that the Ravens need to bring in another star cornerback, but with Marlon playing as well as he is, having a career-high 4 interceptions through just 7 games, and rookie Nate Wiggins looking capable of handling more work and getting better with each game, my concern with the secondary is with the 2 safeties, Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson. Through 7 games, Marcus Williams has been targeted 17 times, allowing 11 completions, 236 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And while this might not be the end-all be-all as far as a measuring stick, his passer rating against him this season is a 147.3. Surprisingly, Eddie Jackson might even be worse than Marcus Williams. Jackson has been targeted 25 times, allowing 15 completions for 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 132.2. 2 of those touchdowns allowed on the season came last week against the Cleveland Browns, as well as missing a couple of extremely catchable interceptions. It's hard to say that any one play is the reason that a team wins or loses a game, and that's certainly true with how many mistakes the Ravens have made against the Browns. But what's easy to say is that if Jackson stops either of those 2 touchdowns or catches either of those interceptions, the game would have been a whole lot different. The first and least likely safety for the Ravens to go out and get is Tyrann Mathieu from the New Orleans Saints. At 32 years old, Mathieu has shown he's still more than capable of playing the safety position, recording 2 interceptions and not allowing a touchdown so far through 8 games. And while he has allowed 13 completions on 16 targets for 259 yards, his average passer rating on the year is a 79.2, nearly half that of Marcus Williams. The 2 biggest issues I see stopping a trade from happening between the Ravens and the Saints for Mathieu is the money and the fit. Mathieu is signed through 2028, and while 2026 through 2027 are void years, his cap hit in 2025 is $11.3 million. The Saints would have to be willing to eat a huge chunk of his contract for the Ravens to even consider this trade. The second reason this trade doesn't quite work is the role on the defense that Matthews plays is not that of a true free safety, but more so of a box do-it-all safety, similar to our own all-pro safety Kyle Hamilton. I don't think I need to explain why taking our 6'4", 220-pound unicorn Kyle Hamilton off the field for a 32-year-old Tyrann Mathieu should not and is not going to happen. If this trade were offered to me after the 2020 season, I would take it in a heartbeat. But with the playstyle and cap numbers being what they are, I very much doubt that this move is the one that happens. The second most likely option I can see the Ravens pursuing is 29-year-old safety Xavier Woods from the Carolina Panthers. So far through 8 games, he's been targeted 22 times, allowing 15 completions for 199 yards and 2 touchdowns. At first, this might not seem like that big of an upgrade over Williams or Jackson, but with considerably lower passer rating at 108, as well as an interception, he is actually a very clear upgrade over both of our safeties. While he has been credited with 2 touchdowns, both were in the first 4 games of the season, the first in Week 1 against Derek Carr and the Saints, and the other in Week 4 against Joe Burrow and the Tiger Bees. Since then, he's allowed only 7 completions on 12 targets for just 70 yards, and a combined passer rating against him of only 80. Not to mention, he's one of their leading tacklers with 56 combined tackles so far in 2024. If the Panthers are willing to take on some of his $7.7 million cap hit, he is a free agent after 2024, which makes him a potentially cheap loaner. And as a proven veteran safety with a career completion percentage of 64.8% and an average passer rating of 94.3, He would be a slightly younger and less expensive option than Matthew, while also being an upgrade over what we've seen out of Williams and Jackson in 2024. The safety that I'd most like to see the Ravens go out and trade for is New York Giants safety Jason Pinnock. Taken in the 5th round of the 2021 draft by the New York Jets, Pinnock is almost the polar opposite of Matthew at 6 foot, 200 pounds, and is 4 years younger than Woods. Pinnock is young and less experienced than Matthew or Woods, but with equally high upside. After a rough first 2 years in the league, Pinnock has become a staple in the Giants' secondary, starting in all 24 games over the last 2 years. Last year, through 16 games, Pinnock allowed only 23 completions on 42 targets for 313 yards and 2 touchdowns, with a passer rating against him of only 74.8. He also had 2 sacks and 2 interceptions, one of which he returned 102 yards for a touchdown. Through 8 games this season, he's allowed 8 completions on 12 targets for 98 yards and 0 touchdowns, while already having 3 sacks on the season. And don't think that the 12 targets comes from a lack of playing time, as he's been on the field for 96% of the Giants' defensive snaps this year. With Pinnock having a cap hit this year of only 3.1 and being a free agent in 2025, this might be an opportunity for the Ravens to trade for and cash in on an aspiring young starting caliber safety. As far as the likelihood of these moves happening, I would say I'm about 80% sure that EDC makes a move before the trade deadline. I'm much less confident that the move he makes is for one of the players I've suggested here, as he is an NFL GM with decades of experience, and I'm just a guy looking for a way for this team to improve in 2 of their most obvious weak spots on defense. If EDC makes a move for either a safety or an outside linebacker, I'll be happy. And while I doubt he could swing a safety and an outside linebacker, I would be over the moon if that happened. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with the players and positions that I've suggested we trade for, or do you think there are more pressing needs elsewhere or even better players you have your eyes on? Let me know in the comments section down below, and as always guys, stay safe out there and go Ravens.